Soccer Today is powered by Spin Media. From podcast to video production, visit spinmediadigitalsolutions.com and bring your content to the next level.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Dwayne Rollins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, August. Yes, it's August 15th, 2022. I'm Kevin Laramie, and Dwayne will be back with a regular schedule later this week as I had to pre-record this show as we are Monday morning weekend review. We will also look at the Supporters Shield race today, points per game up until now, who's ahead. A little teaser, it's LAFC, but who's in the hunt? We'll talk about that later today. And Nacho Piatti's return to Montreal. Yes, you heard that right. More details to come. Not in MLS. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We'll talk about it later today as I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on that notification bell. Also to be made aware of whenever we upload a brand new episode, a brand new show of Soccer Today. Nacho's return to Montreal. Yes, Nacho Piatti will be playing in Montreal Wednesday in the Alumni and Media game at Centre Claude-Robillard. You can come and watch not only Nacho Piatti, but yours truly making my return to the field with Patrice Bernier and more. We'll break down the roster of the media and of the former players later in the show. And yes, I'm really excited to be on the field Wednesday. I'm more in shape than I ever was. It's going to be a fun time. I hope you come support all of us media and see Nacho play. He's in shape. He just finished his season. He's going to be the most in shape player out there, making fools of all of us. And I invite you to come and see this beautiful festivities, because there will be a U23 game of Montreal after the media game. It's going to be a great time at Centre Claude-Robillard Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Please come, and you can even cheer on myself trying to play soccer and not make a fool out of myself in front of everybody. All right, it's time to look at the results in Major League Soccer. It is the famous MLS Weekend Review. And a busy weekend, a lot of goals. Like what? Over 50 goals in Major League Soccer this weekend. Here we go. Let's start. New York, Orlando. Orlando getting the better of the Red Bulls at home. Of course, the Red Bulls are better on the road this year, and we saw that again. Orlando getting the result. 3 points. That is very important. Those 3 points are so important in the standings. We will break down the standings in the Eastern Conference later in the show. Cincinnati, Atlanta, cracker of a game, 2-2. Big draw for Atlanta, but for Cincinnati, it's also an important point. We will look at where they stand right now. Wayne Rooney and DC United cannot buy a draw or a point to save their life. Another defeat, this time against the New England Revolution. Big win for the Revs, keeping in touch to a playoff position at this point. Big win by Philadelphia, 4-1 against Chicago. Philadelphia continuing to be one of the best teams this season, best in the Eastern Conference, top not of the entirety of the race, but they are a contender in the Supporters Shield race, and we'll break that down later in the show. So, Philadelphia, Chicago, 4-1. Toronto, Portland, will break that down a bit more statistically a little bit later, but one thing that I really think is important to look forward to is that they are in an upward trend, Toronto. They're scoring. The Italian experiment, the Italian job is paying off for now. But is it too little too late? The points per game needed to maybe make a playoff for Toronto might be over 2 until the end of the season. It might be a bit too much of an ask, but we will see if it's possible. We'll break that one down later. Same for Miami and NYCFC. Big game for Miami, 3-2. Ariel Lassiter scored. Pozuelo scored twice. And the Flamingos beat the Citizens in Miami. Always fun to not have a weather delay in a game in Miami in August. Let's continue our breakdown of all the games in MLS for week 25. Colorado, Columbus, 1-1 draw. Thank you, Cucho, for my fantasy points. You were in my team and you got yourself another goal. Cucho Hernandez performing very well since joining the crew. Moving on to Dallas San Jose. Dallas plowing through this MLS season. A really good team with Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola dominating the statistics for this team this year. They are playing very well. They are in a positive sequence. And now another win, another 3 points, and another climb in the table for Dallas. Houston, Montreal, we won't spend too much time right now because in a couple minutes we'll break that one down statistically speaking. Another win for Montreal on the road. Third straight win on the road. 7th win on the road this season. 6th game unbeaten in MLS. Quite the performance for Montreal. We'll break that one down in just a few as we look at LAFC's big performance against Charlotte. 5-0, LAFC top of the league, top of the table, top of the race, top of the morning to you. Nashville, Minnesota, 1-2. 2 for the Loons, beating Nashville. Nashville on a downward spiral right now. They are dropping like a fly in December really quickly, straight to the ground, and Nashville might find themselves outside the playoffs when October ends. Seattle and Salt Lake. Seattle, another defeat. This one hurts a lot at home against Salt Lake. Seattle not looking like a playoff team. And we will look at the Eastern Conference standings later, but here is the Western Conference standings right now. Seattle is now 9th, 32 points, only 1 point away from Nashville at 7th. But there's a lot of team and not a lot of points, not a lot of playoff positions that are up for debate in the Western Conference. 6th and 7th is maybe in contention, but that gap of 4 points between 5 and 6th might be there to stay. The question is not if Salt Lake will make the playoff, but where will they be when they make the playoff? The question is, will the Galaxy and will Nashville hold on to the 6th and 7th spot? Portland and Seattle in the rearview mirror. Colorado not too far behind, and Vancouver still in reach. The rest is already done with, in my opinion. Houston at 25 points is too far away. Even though they played well against Montreal, they looked like a world beater, but at the end of the day, it wasn't enough. And speaking of, let's break that one down right now. For the 3rd straight time, Montreal on the road and getting all the points, bringing all the spoils back to Stade Saputo, and this time, defenders contributing, Romel Quioto scoring his 12th of the season, and Lassi Lapalainen showing that he's not just a fluke. He's top of Montreal's, well, in the statistical categories. If you're looking at the tackles category, it ain't Rudy Camacho, it ain't Victor Wanyama, it's Mr. Lassi Lapalainen number 1. And he scored his 2nd goal of the season here, and he has great statistics, 2 goals, 5 assists this year. Romel Quioto's got 12 goals. Alistair Johnson scored his 2nd goal, and he has an assist recently too. Great statistics by these players, and that does illustrate Montreal's game plan. When you see players that play on the corridor of Montreal, Lapalainen, Johnston, are the flanks, are your wing backs in a 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 3-4-1-2, depending on the situation. And when they score, you know it's going well. This is the 7th road win this year for Montreal. Best record on the road in the Eastern Conference now. They were 2nd before the game on Saturday. They are also The third straight road win, that's an unprecedented feat by Montreal. 6-game unbeaten streak. They have a better record on the road than at home, a record of 7-4-2 on the road and 6-4-2 on the road. Quite a remarkable performance by Montreal, and this is not just luck. Look at the expected goals in these statistics. For our podcast listeners, I will enumerate the stats right now. Montreal had 15 shots, 7 on target versus Houston, 49% possession, 83% passing accuracy. A measure of the pressure put by Montreal to Houston is the clearances aspect. I think it illustrates the amount of pressure Montreal was able to put on Houston, and you see the difference here. Houston had to clear their penalty area and the 18-yard box 28 times versus 13 for Montreal. Big disparity, and the expected goals for Montreal, 2.3 versus 0.8. You look at the scoreboard, they got lucky with one of the goals, especially the Sebastian Ferreira goal. And to me, this is a big difference in this one. Montreal full measure in this game. What a performance from Montreal. I am quite impressed. And I have to say, this team has something special. I don't know if it's the 2 years of the pandemic on the road that have changed the mentality when they play on the road. But there's something special with this team. The record on the road is already a record for Montreal. Heck, they could maybe beat the all-time road win record of MLS, which is not in front of me, so I'm not going to mention the number, but I will have it on tomorrow's show. And can Montreal now aim for that? Can Montreal aim higher than where they are? Let's look at the Eastern Conference standings for Montreal especially. Montreal is second in the East, 5 points behind Philadelphia, but the same amount of games played. The trick here is NYCFC has only 24 games played, 1 game in hand, and they're only 1 point back. With 3 points, they would climb back to second spot and Montreal would fall to third. But that's okay. It's all right. We'll look at the Supporter Shield race in a minute, and Montreal is very still in the hunt. That was very bad English, but they're still in the hunt, and it's not a problem. NYCFC could have won, but they haven't this weekend. They lost to Miami, and we'll talk about that in a second as I just finish on Montreal for a second. I think Montreal deserves all the accolades they're getting this year. The way they're adapting their system, the way they're adapting their play, and they're able to find ways with the striker Romel Kyoto, who's hot now. 6 goals in his last 7 games with the weekend. It should have been more. He missed a penalty. It should have been a 4-2 result when you look at this really objectively on the road for Montreal. Houston looked like a really good team, but it's the way they play, and they counted on the counterattack, and they were not able to catch Montreal on the counterattack. Montreal is one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, if not the entirety of MLS in goals per counterattack. Haven't allowed only 1 goal per counterattack this year, according to Who Scored. And when you look at Houston, they only scored 1 goal on the counterattack. It was never going to happen. You might want to question a little bit Paulo Nakamura's tactical choice if this was his breakthrough to break down Montreal's defense to catch him on the counter. That being said, Montreal, especially in the first half of this game, was using a higher press than normal. They had a makeshift starting lineup with a lot of younger players like Ismaël Koné, Mathieu Choignard starting this one, Choignard next to Samuel Piatti in the midfield, and you had young players on the wings of that 3-4-3 with Alistair Johnston on the right and Lassie Lapalainen on the left. Ismaël Koné was on top to the right in front of Alistair Johnston, and left you had Mihailovic and Romel Kyoto. A lot of speed in this one, and you saw Montreal play a harder and tighter pressing game in the beginning and in the especially all the way to the middle of the second half before they start defending the scoreboard. One more thing to note is Georgi Mihailovic's game. Georgi Mihailovic was close to scoring a couple times, a couple shots that were, well, I have to say, not necessarily, they were not predictable. I don't know if they're replicable, but the fact that they were surprising and came from far away gave Montreal a very good chance of scoring right there for Georgi Mihailovic. He had a couple of good point-blank chances too. It's very close for Georgi Mihailovic. His statistics since his return are not there. No goals and no decisive passes, no assists, as we could say. But his play is there. He's getting sharper, and his eye for goal is coming back. And soon, Georgi will find the back of the net. On that note, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we will continue to break down some of the games in Major League Soccer's Week 25, and we will look at Nacho Piatti's return to Montreal Wednesday night against yours truly. That and more after this short break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And we're back on Soccer Today as I invite you to say hello to all our Patreons. Shout out to all the patrons that are on the shout out tier: Pierre, Patrick, Martin, Jordany, and Gonzalo, Glad, Dennis, Daniel, Sean, and Blue Collar Dan, aka Let's Go Boys himself, listening to us live as we speak. Thank you for giving us your money every month and for supporting the show. It's great to have you. And if you want to do just like them, you can go to patreon.com/2solitudes and join the shout out tier at $5 US, $7.50 a month. And you can also get access to the Two Solitudes podcast with all the tiers on our Patreon feed. That's patreon.com/2solitudes. As I now transition to talk about Nacho Piatti's return to Montreal. Nacho will be back this Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern at Centre Claude-Robillard. This is not televised. This is a media and Montreal alumni game. You can watch myself play. My return to the field will also take place at 5:30 Eastern time at the Centre Claude-Robillard. We will break down the rosters of the players in just a few minutes as I now continue my breakdown of a few games that caught my attention last weekend as we now look at one of the best teams in the league but is still struggling. New York. Since losing Tati hasn't been easy to score. Thales Magno has raised his level. Thiago Andrade also. But the change of coach and the roster changes, I think, are getting the best of NYCFC. And NYCFC, yes, still have a game in hand and could climb back to second in the Eastern Conference very quickly. But before long, remember this. You change one thing and the rest stays the same. You got a chance to continue. Two, you still got a good chance to continue the same level. But the more and more you change this roster, this mentality, this confidence level, and especially from the top down when it comes to your manager and to your best striker, you will see the results on the field and it will affect. And I think we're there. That's what we're seeing. And for Miami to get this result in Miami, Pozuelo 2 goals and Ariel Lassiter scored also. He scored the second goal for Miami. Ariel Lassiter, yes, Lassiter is a familiar name in Major League Soccer. Roy Lassiter, his father, had the record for most amount of goals in a season before Chris Wondolowski broke it a few years ago with 27. And then, of course, more players broke it, like Jose Martinez and others. But for years and years, Roy Lassiter had the record for most amount of goals scored in one season. And I believe the record was 27 off the top of my head. But this victory by Miami is maybe a robbery in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, if we're looking at the clearances aspect, expected goal aspect also. But when you looked at the game, Miami had a little bit of a dangerous feel. And that's the second time in a few weeks where I look at Miami and I'm not convinced they're bad. This is the best Miami team in MLS. It's funny because it's maybe the cheapest one so far too. Pizarro or the players like that. They got rid of all the big assets like Morgan and Campana, but they find, well, Campana is actually the one helping them right now, and Pozuelo. We'll see how they evolve this year, but losing Carranza to Philadelphia and Morgan to New York because of the salary restrictions and allocation restrictions they have this year because they tried to cheat a few years ago. So, how does Miami play? Well, they get results, and I've been surprised by how they're starting to gel offensively, and they are threatening. I see them with Pozuelo on the ball, and the Flamingos are not sleeping on a foot. The Flamingos are ready to attack, and the Flamingos are flocking to a playoff spot before long. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple weeks from now we're talking about them as a outsider team to maybe make a surprise victory in the first round of a playoff, and then you never know what can happen. I would not want to play this type of game against Miami in a weather situation that could be interesting, but it would be on the road. Probably they're too far down the pecking order to play at home. But Flamingos are surprising, and they beat the defending champions, and we'll see if NYCFC can find their mojo. I think it's the beginning of the downward spiral. We'll see if I'm right or wrong on this one, as we will continue to look at one more game, well, two actually, Toronto and Portland, and we'll keep most of the Toronto talk for tomorrow when Dwayne and I will break that one down statistically. But the Italian job in Toronto is working out pretty good. 3-1 against Portland. Maybe that's something to say about Portland. Osorio, 41st minute, scored the first goal of the game. Rankin equalized at the 73rd. Insigne made it 2-1 for Toronto, and Bernardeschi at the 85th made it 3-1. Toronto with 2.5 expected goals. Expected goal for Portland of 0.5. Great performance by TFC. And we'll break that one down more specifically tomorrow with Dwayne, as we should be live around 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern on our social media network. Let's now move to LA Vancouver. Big defeat for Vancouver. Ryan Gauld and St. Ricketts scored in the defeat. Christian Daume got a red card at the 79th minute. Samuel Grandsir scored twice. Chicharito scored at the 20th minute from the penalty spot. Victor Vasquez at the 30th minute. And Efrain Alvarez later in the game made it 5-2 for the Galaxy. This is a big win for the Galaxy. They deserved this victory. As we will break down and look at the standings in a second, this is a big win as the Galaxy are now back in a playoff position, but barely 6th with 33 points, equaled with 7th, but 2 games in hand versus Nashville. Nashville has a lot more games played and is my candidate to be slipping out of the playoff spot before long. Seattle could take over with the amount of games played. Colorado is not out of it yet. Colorado has 2 games in hand versus Portland and Nashville, 2 teams that are battling for a playoff spot. This is going to be a Royal Rumble from the Galaxy, Nashville, Portland, Seattle, Colorado, and you can throw Vancouver into the mix. 6 people. Royal Rumble. Who's going to be thrown over the top rope? Ooh, yeah, brother. Who's going to fall down to the mat? Ooh, yeah. On that note, I hope you're enjoying this very bad rendition of Randy Masso and Savage. All right, let's continue now the conversation. When we look at the Eastern Conference standings, we've looked at the standings a bit earlier, but now let's break it down, looking at what's ahead for Montreal. Montreal is second in the Eastern Conference with 43 points, followed by NYCFC with 42. Montreal's got 1 game more played there. And soon Montreal's got New England coming up. They have Red Bulls coming up. That's a massive game versus the Red Bulls in just a few weeks. Those are very important because we're going to look at the Supporter Shield race in a second, and those are great games for Montreal. But there, as you see, the battle here for the Eastern Conference is, I think, between New York, Columbus, Orlando, Miami. But they're like a couple of different, kind of like different tiers here, and I think it's not as defined as the Western Conference, but I think Cincinnati and New England are still in the hunt, but I think Chicago might be a little bit too far ways away. I think Cincinnati has a shot, or New England has a shot, and Orlando and Miami might be in jeopardy. But Columbus, upwards, I think it's not about if they're going to make the playoff. I think it's about where will they be when the playoff starts. As we now take a second and look at the Supporters' Shield race in Major League Soccer. LAFC, top of the league, 2.25 points per game. And I love to look at the points per game at this point, because some teams do have some games in hand, and this gives you a bit more of an overview of the race in a global perspective, in the whole perspective, a more wholesome perspective for the season. LAFC and all their 20,000 acquisitions this summer, top of the league with 2.25, followed by Austin FC, second in the points per game with 1.92 because of the amount of wins they have versus Philadelphia. That is why there's a difference here. Philadelphia is second with 1.92. New York City FC is fourth in the points per game race with 1.75. Montreal just behind at 1.72. Minnesota at 152, sixth. FC Dallas is 7th in the Supporters' Shield race when looking at the points per game with 1.50. And the New York Red Bulls are 8th with 1.48 points per game at this point. The Red Bulls will face Montreal in a few weeks. That will be a very massive game in the Eastern Conference. But that was your weekend review. And I hope you enjoyed this weekend review, as I invite you to not only like and support our channel by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking on the notification bell, but you can find this podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, and all the other places you can find your favorite podcasts. You can find this show also. And if you're looking for some help to bring your content to a new level, you can subscribe and join our newsletter. You can contact myself or my team at spinmediadigitalsolutions.com. We can help you with your graphic, with your plan, your action plan to make your show a more discoverable, working with your SEO, working with all the benefit of years of experience to bring your content to the next level. Speaking of the next level, Wednesday 5:30, something I never thought was going to happen. I will be playing with or against Nacho Piatti. Yes, Nacho's big return to Montreal, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Centre Claude-Robillard. It will be a hoot. Nacho Piatti, Patrice Bernier, amongst other great players, former players, will take part in this great event that is presented by Adonis Mediterranean Market here in Montreal. Montreal Impact former players and media will face each other, but not against each other, because the media would get destroyed here. So it's going to be mixed teams, but do not miss the chance to see Nacho Piatti, to see Patrice Bernier wear the Montreal uniform one last time, and yours truly representing the Montreal media and making a fool of myself live on the field of Centre Claude-Robillard, August 17th, this Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Let's look at all the great former players that will be taking part in this great event this year, organized by Montreal. And of course, Patrice Bernier, former captain of Montreal, great colleague at TVA Sport, and he's going to be present in this one. Ignacio Piatti, the big name. It was announced that he will be taking part of this one, so come early, come all, and have fun to watch Nacho Piatti in Montreal. Rocco Placentino will be there also. Great name. Isham Abubu will be playing. Moro Biello, Asun Camara are also players that were wearing the blue, white, and black uniform in the past that will take part in this game. Abraham François, Nicolas Corneli, Charles Becquet. Yes, the former glory of the 2000s with Montreal Impact in the A-League. Charles Becquet will be taking part. Canadian international legend Ali Gerba will also take part in this one. Gabriel Gervais, current president of CF Montreal and former defender extraordinaire of Montreal Impact. former captain of the Montreal Impact, Gabriel Gervais, taking part in this one. Sandro Grande, former amazing midfielder and player for Montreal, will also be here. Leo Uncoligno, Jamel Larabi, goalkeeper and a great goalkeeper coach in the youth system across Canada and other places too, and will be fun to see him in net between the posts on Wednesday. Patrick Leduc, of course, of Montreal Academy. He's the director of the CF Montreal Academy, and he's going to play here. Former player for Montreal in the 2000s and 2010s. André Lefebvre will also be playing. Former Montreal Impact defender in MLS. Federico Mugen, Grand Needham. By the way, André Lefebvre actually still playing in the PLSQ. He's playing for FC Laval. And all the best to André Lefebvre. It'll be great to play. If I'm playing with you, it'll be great. If I'm playing against you, well, all the best. And hopefully I don't look too much like a fool, Federico Mugen, who has a great combine here in Montreal. The Ribeiro Mugen combine helps a lot of players find a place to play in the US in the college system from Montreal, and a lot of scholarships, and he does a lot of work with young players, and he has a great career in all the different leagues across North America. Former player from Montreal also, Federico Mugen. Grant Needham, the original number 9, who is a color commentator on TSN Radio for the broadcast of the CF Montreal games, and he will be playing also. Nacho Piatti, like mentioned earlier, his return to Montreal. First time he will be wearing this uniform since 2019. 2018 was last season. Rocco Placentino will be here. Chris Statopoulos, and the coaches will be Valerio Gazzola and John Limniadis. Equipment manager extraordinaire Mike Moretto and Aldo Ricciuti will be here also to help all the players and the media discover their brand new jerseys and everything. It's going to be great to play this one on Wednesday. Let's look at the representative of the media for this game. Yes, I highlighted my own name. I did that. I did the thing. Nacho's return to Montreal. Here are the Montreal media players for this great game. Evelyne Audet, Antonin Bessner, Eric Bolte, Olivier Brett, Chris Burry, Eric Chenois, Paul Desbaillet, Jean-François Dos Santos, Jérémy Filosa, Sydney Fowo, Sydney of Caen Football Club and 91.9 FM also. Hello, Sydney. Georges Larac, former NHL player. Georges Larac will be taking part of this one. And no, I will not be fighting Georges Larac, nor any of us should. It's never a good idea, and he's a great person, according to all accounts, and I'm looking forward to having the chance to play with these great players. Inias Grigoriadis will be also playing. Omar Guardado, Fabrizio Intravaya, Elias Laradi, myself, Kevin Larme, will be here. Benoit Lavoie, welcome to Montreal, Benoit. Hopefully you'll be enjoying this one. Marco Luciani of Omni Television will be playing in this one. Akim Mamri, Anthony Martineau of tvsport.ca, I believe. I think that might be changing. I don't know. Look at that. I'm not up to date on my sports media gossips. Gilberto Miranda, Alberto Mora, Quentin Parisis. Quentin is the editor of Soccer Quebec Magazine, Quebec Soccer Magazine, a great free magazine that I do suggest if you are a French speakerphone. If you're a reader of French, you can also find Mose Persico of CTV, I believe. He does the cinema reviews for CTV, if I'm not mistaken, and the weather. And Horacio Zamora. Those will be your representative of all the Montreal media, and I hope you join us on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. for this great return. It's free! The return of Nacho Piatti at Centre Claude-Robillard, the media versus... Well, it's not versus, thank God. The Montreal media, Montreal players, alumni, and it'll be fun. There'll be barbecue and things that you could do over there. We'll see you on Wednesday, but until then, we'll see you tomorrow with a brand new edition of the World of Football with a soccer perspective Until then, you can follow this show everywhere you find your favorite podcast. That'll be Spotify, Google Play Store, and Apple Podcasts, and of course Spreaker, and all the other platforms. You can also subscribe to our premium feed and support us financially by going to patreon.com/2solitudes. You can find all the details of different tiers and more at patreon.com/2solitudes. And once again, if you would like to bring your content to a whole new level with graphics, video, just if you need some advice, you can contact myself and my team at spinmediadigitalsolutions.com for more details. As always, until next time, I'm Kevin Laramie. Yes, I am. Come see me Wednesday, and until then, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.